another episode of the Rugby Bits podcast. We are here to look at round 3 of the Six Nations and also just on the other weekend's rugby that was happening. I'm Thala. I'm joined by Shaun today. Shaun, how are you doing this week?
Hi, my man. I'm great, thank you. I've just managed to steal some cupcake dough, or what's it? Juice stuff. My daughter's making cupcakes, so basically, what I did was I text her. You know, when you've got that, basically, like kids will do it their whole life. I just did a reversey there, and I went to go steal some of that cupcake dough batter. That's the word. It was lovely.
Better. Yeah, look, I mean, I'm not yet at that stage of my life of obviously having my own children, but I do hear from parents about the whole parent tax thing, and it seems like it's a real thing, Shaun.
Mate, it's huge. My daughter's like, she's 15, so like, she's old enough now that I can put in those taxes. Like, ask her to buy me a Coke, and then she's like, "Here's your Coke," and then she's like, "Can I get some money?" I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. That was from you to me with love." But the negotiations in all of these are pretty good. But to be fair, she just gets me back because kids will always get you back. You will never win as a parent. The winning is the kids, right?
That is true. Well, I mean, we'll be looking at some well-performing kids, especially ones from Wales today. And Sean, we didn't have a chance to record last week once the news came in that Warren Gatland was officially out, that he's been fired from Wales. So before we get into the game itself, and obviously Wales having a much better performance than they've had in the last few tests. What was your reaction to Gatland getting the boot?
It was weird because, I mean, I think it was even the week before last. I'm like, the guy's got to go. And then you're like, but rugby just doesn't do that. You don't do that mid tournament. We spoke about it in November. Like, if it wasn't Warren Gatland, the coach would have been gone long time ago. It was a very weird relationship. It was weird. Like, he honestly didn't look happy about anything. He looked like he aged 10 years every loss. Like, there was shit weighing on his shoulders. So it was weird. Them deciding that it's okay for him to go was by mutual agreement in inverted commas. It was definitely the right thing. I think Wales. I think the bosses regretted not accepting his resignation when he tried to hand it in last year,
Last year.
and then I think they just were pot committed. Like, they just could not afford to fire him. So it needed to come from Gatland so he could say, listen, I do want to leave. And then they're like, cool, okay, you can go with the greatest of pleasure. We don't have to pay you out, is my understanding. But it's the right decision all around. Like, to be honest, I think, like I said, it just didn't look right. Warren Gatland also deserves better, and so do the players. Like, Warren Gatland is not going to be remembered for, you know, the the rugby and the Grand Slams and Lions tours and all that sort of stuff. He's going to be remembered for this innings. And I know his Lions coaching, like, effectively he was head coach for 3 tours, I think, which was a
Yeah,
draw, a win, a loss, and a draw.
and a draw.
New Zealand, which, I mean, the win against Australia was expected. The draw against New Zealand's massive, I feel, and then it was pretty tough against South Africa. It came down; it was pretty close, but yeah, such is such.
Yeah, look, I think number one, this doesn't happen if Gatland doesn't, you know, what's the word? I'm also now struggling for words, but
Fall on his
basically,
sword.
yes, and also refuse to get the payout for the rest of his
Yeah,
contract.
yeah,
I do think this was a situation of, Sean, I think we've all been there, in life where, you're going to have to eat, I mean, we all have our 2 minute noodle stages of our life. Some of us maybe are still there, where, you're just going to eat whatever you can afford. And Wales couldn't really afford, even if, there's 14 losses in a row, even if the quality of the rugby was going down, even if selections just didn't make sense, even if Gatland refused to pick players in their actual positions, it wasn't going to happen until there was some way where basically they'd have to rely on Gatland just having enough shame to just say, okay, you know what, I'm fine, I'll leave. I won't take the payout as well. So I I cynically think that was basically the only reason Wales allowed the resignation to happen. Whereas, like you said, last year Gatland did offer, but I guess in that negotiation or in that offer, I assume Gatland maybe said, okay, you can pay me for a year or 2 years. And Wales like, oh, yikes, we can't do that. And they said, we can't afford that, so you'll need to stay. So I think it's all about that. But it's interesting. I don't know if you listened to um, the Telegraph's interview with Warren Gatland once he got fired. Did you have a chance to listen to that, Sean?
No, I've seen little bits and pieces of it on socials, but I haven't yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's kind of similar to I think some of the conversations we had about Eddie Jones, where I think the generation of Gatland, Eddie, to an extent Jake White, you can see in some ways the game has left them, or especially sort of the player management aspect of it has left them, and more and more they're becoming more of these like grumpy old men compared to you know the younger newer coaches that can sort of get that sort of emotional buy-in from the team and everything. But I mean, Gatland I think raises good points about he can't really rely on that, especially with like someone like Gareth Anscombe, he can't really rely on him being available for 2027, which is why he was trying to find another 10 option, but obviously he was playing Ben Thomas at 10, which maybe didn't make that much sense.
Yeah.
He he can't rely on, or he would love to pick mostly a Wales based side, but the Welsh regions are not doing well in the URC. He was talking about the fact that, he would love a situation where he can, really expand on the game and focus on winning and all that sort of stuff. But Wales is sort of in, I guess, a transition from, the last 10 to 15 years where he was obviously the coach of and getting those players back. And he talked about the structural issues of, Welsh rugby and why things aren't working and they don't have any, like the National Academy anymore and England stealing their players at high school and all that sort of stuff. And he's like, okay, good points. But, and I guess we'll sort of go into it when we talk about the game on Saturday. That all aside doesn't solve for your team didn't know how to attack. Your team seemed like it didn't know how to kick. You're playing players out of position for who knows what reason. And in 1 week, essentially, a coach comes in and an attack that you are trying to get off the ground looks so much better against basically the best side in the Six Nations. So, what could Matt Sherratt do that you couldn't do?
Yeah, it's like all of that stuff you mentioned is right. And the questions you ask afterwards are also right. But it doesn't change the fact that trying to so if you look at the players, the way that they approached things were different. Like all of that stuff can be true. Like the academy's gone, the this is happening, blah blah blah. But if you know that you are going to be rewarded and go and play rugby, test rugby in a good environment, that changes players. We saw it with Russie. I'm very I will die on this hill when in 2018, when Russie Rasmus took over and things started changing and conversations started being having, I really feel like the breath of fresh air amongst the players and what we were seeing was evident. Like we could see a difference. Teams started playing better. Like so after 2019, 2020, we were probably our club sides, our franchises were probably the best they've been in a while. Well, for one, the Sharks were in great form. Like there were players playing well because they knew they were going to get picked based on their form. Like I really think that matters. Like if players are like, oh, he's not going to pick me. He's not gonna. He's gonna play shitty rugby, or the environment's crap. Like, it's the same conversations that were happening 5 years ago. Like, I don't really want to be. I'll be there if he asks me, but no one's really gonna bust their ass for him. Like, that's kind of how I feel it happened, and I just think that when he signed for Wales and went there, and perhaps went there with this idea of he was going to make these changes, even though there were problems, like he could facilitate it. I think when he sat in that chair, almost that first time, he was like, "Oh fuck, I'm back again. I'm back here," and all those emotions and everything came back, because it's difficult to change who you are if you step away from an environment, go somewhere else, and then come back to almost that exact same environment, maybe a little bit worse off or different. And there's different people, but there's still that negativity. Like, it's really hard to be a different person and be like a new broom will sweep clean kind of vibe. I just don't. I think he was just like, oh shit, I've done this again, and it didn't work, and it didn't work from very, very early on.
Yeah, I mean, also to be fair to him, the World Cup, I guess, did work. I mean, Wales got out of their group where, I mean, I remember saying I don't think they'd even get out of their group because they looked so poor. And they should have probably got to a semi final. They sort of really, just lost their heads in the second half against Argentina. So 2023, you would have said, okay, that was a success. Then 2024, you're like, okay, new team, young players. And you're like, okay, I mean, Witherspoon isn't great, but you now have, the Costellos, the Bothams, the Dafford Jenkins, that very young side. They're getting some experience. They'll hopefully become better players. Then the Australia tour happens and it's getting worse. And it just felt like also Gatland just kept putting he had a bit of a foot and mouth disease. Like, he kept sort of
Yeah.
either saying or doing things that just angered people more, like making Corey Hill captain of the midweek team, and some of the stuff he was saying against the play, or like in favor of the board when the players were about to strike and stuff like that. You're just like, okay, he's not really helping himself. So I think that's why you even said, Shaun, earlier, it did seem like this man was not really happy in his job in any case. But we come now to, Matt Sherratt comes in. He's the Cardiff coach. He's an attack coach by trade. And the hardest thing when you're trying to fix a team is the attack. And Wales host Ireland in Cardiff, and they lose 18 points to 27. And John, I mean, for a lot of that game, at least in the middle part, Wales was leading, and they're leading by 8. And it did seem like, oh, Ireland might actually, they might be in trouble here. And I mean, Wales could have scored. I mean, if Me doesn't drop the ball on the try line, Wales could have got themselves 1 point in with, like, what, 5 minutes to go. Like, this was a pretty close game.
Yeah, it was. I expected Wales to be like that, but not for such a long period of time. When the new coach comes in and he's an interim coach, and he's like, he made it very clear, like, he's going to do the short term and then go back to coaching Cardiff, blah blah blah. But then he made quite some important changes, which is great. So he's essentially signaling his intent to all the players and everyone, like, listen, we are going to be doing new stuff. We are going to get this going, blah blah blah. But Wales came out. What's great is Ireland. I honestly believe now, if we look back at it, I think Ireland kind of approached the game in a way like, listen, we will win it. So we've just got to go through the motions. Maybe mentally they weren't like so switched on as if they could play the All Blacks hypothetically, or the Springboks. Um, and they ran into a Welsh side that were like playing like fighting two weight divisions above from where they usually do. So it was great. Like, there were so many. I mean, Russ Petty on Twitter was pushing out some ridiculous stats. Like, line breaks made in the first 20 minutes were almost equal to the same amounts of line breaks Wales have made in the last 3 games, or something like that. Like, you
Sounds
kind
about
of
right.
get, yeah, you kind of get the gist of it. Like, they were different. They were operating. Their shape was different. Their focus was different, and they definitely attacked Ireland in a different way. Not a different way for Wales, but they actually were doing an attack that was different. Like there was a Welsh kind of different attack, but they were also doing it like there was tailor made to working on Ireland, which was excellent. Like it was quite clear that Ireland were kind of had to scramble every now and then. It wasn't a case of like a lucky bounce here and a crazy Hail Mary cross kick that unlocked everyone. It's like well manufactured. So yeah, it was excellent, excellent. I just hope Wales can maintain this this intensity and focus, which I think they will moving forward. It's going to be lovely. But they were as good as they were. I think Ireland were bad as well, and it definitely the way Wales were playing impacted the Irish kind of form as well, definitely. But initially, like Wales, really started cooking, and I think Ireland woke up to it very, very late, and there was a chance there where, for a long time, where a lot of people were thinking, Wales could really win this, and that would have been ridiculous.
Yeah, I think on Wales, it seemed like I was also seeing a thread from Ben James looking at just the Wales attack. It kind of looked like how Ireland usually attacks, or have been attacking for most of the Andy Farrell era. I think it's kind of changing now with Prendergast and Crowley being at 10. But it was basically that whole thing where what Ireland does of setting up their forward pods to link with the back line and getting that pass out the back door, getting into the fly half, having people run sort of all these intricate lines. And basically anytime you have the ball and you're carrying the ball, everyone, you have options left and right of you for people to carry the ball or to get past. You have options to pass to, and the defender has to basically look at you and say, okay, there's three things that could happen here. You could pass to your left, you could pass to your right, or you could run yourself. And it really felt like it was so well constructed and intricate on how they got that attack going. And interesting stat that came out was, so Ben Thomas and Max Llewellyn play in the centres. Ben Thomas was playing fly half for most of the Gatland era. It seemed like Max Llewellyn, for whatever reason, got dropped. Gatland said something weird about, as a sidebar, that in the November international against South Africa, Llewellyn didn't have a carry. Like he didn't get the ball once against South Africa, which seemed like was the main reason why he dropped him. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, you look at the stats, it is true, but yeah, he seemed to basically be like, well, you can't have a player that doesn't get himself to the ball. Okay, you're not fair enough. But in this game, so 12 and 13, Ben Thomas has 9 carries and has 34 passes. Llewellyn has 9 carries and has 8 passes, which I think shows that like both the centers weren't just being used, just direct route one crash ball, just getting into the teeth of the defense. They were being used as playmakers. And it just felt like that whole back line, because of the players that Sherratt picked and the shape that he had, Blair Murray was popping up as a playmaker. Tom Rogers is a playmaker. The wing, Elliot Mee was coming on as a playmaker as well. Like it really did feel like there were so many options and things that Ireland had to look at. It really did feel like, okay, this is what we were looking at with Ireland, a year or so ago with Lowe and Hansen just popping up in different phases at first receiver. Or if the ball goes out wide, it's not going to someone that's just going to run. It could be someone that can pass themselves. They have options in and inside and outside of them as well. So, and that's how I think Wales really capitalized on that period, especially when Gary Ringrose was red carded. Was they were able to really exploit, you know, Ireland and to really make the defenders have to make decisions, and that's what literally what Ireland does, and that's probably the way to go for a smaller for. Sorry about that, but for a
Good
smaller
save.
team, if you have a smaller team, you don't have those big ball carriers. That's how you need to play. Is give. have the attacking shape that is always asking questions of the defense, and that's what Wales did so well on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm a massive supporter of, like, when you play, you must be an option runner. So back in the day, we always spoke about, like, oh, I'm going to run a dummy line. Like, don't run a dummy line, because in a test rugby, in a professional world, a dummy line is picked up very quickly if you're not a viable option, if you're running too flat or in front of the ball, or you're literally in no space to get the ball. The guys will just move on to the right ball carrier. So when you're running guys that are legitimate options, it's huge. And I'm glad that you mentioned, like, how Thomas and Llewellyn played. The one thing I will say, over and above everything, like, the guys, there was a lot, like Thomas and Llewellyn were doing a lot, which was great, and they were changing it up. But what I will say is, me and Rogers and Llewellyn are massive. They are really, really big guys. Rogers and
Mm.
me were doing a lot. Me on debut was like, he was not going to die wondering. He was like,
No.
I want to get hands on the ball. I want to do my thing. I'm going to be on your wing. I'm going to be on my wing. I'm going to be in the middle. He was doing a lot. He made a couple of errors, but it wasn't like, nothing really struck you like, oh shit, another error. He was just kind of like in the mix. He was doing three things good for every one little balls up he did. But Wales have big guys, like, barring Murray, who's, to be fair, is not the biggest out of that back line, but he was heavily involved. They've seemed to have a decent balance there. Um, and yeah, like, Llewellyn was involved. I'm a massive fan of Thomas at 12, because, like, seeing him at 10, I was just like, I hope this is not going to kill off his test career, because he did move to 12 under Gatland in the beginning of this tournament, and he looked great. And he's a 12 with a 10 mind. So he's got the ability to carry it up and do 12E things, but he's also got the ability to shift it on, to see space, to make different decisions. And having a guy like Llewellyn outside and a guy like Anscombe on your inside, like, you're pretty safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're looking, yeah, they're looking good. I thought Williams was good at 9. Murray, it was really hard to pick anyone that I thought was a standout. I thought Me was brilliant, but the backline player of the game for me is probably Murray. Williams comes close. And what I will say is, Joe Roberts off the bench, what, he played 18 minutes, 20 minutes. Do you know that he made 4 dominant tackles? More than anyone?
Mm.
Crazy,
Jeez.
man.
Yeah, it does seem like, look, I think also Sherratt just made things simple for himself. Okay, the back three, Scarlets. You Scarlets people do your thing. Then the inside backs, Gloucester and Cardiff. And it seems like Thomas has played with Llewellyn before, because Llewellyn was at Cardiff. Obviously Anscombe and Thomas Williams know each other from Gloucester. Anscombe and Llewellyn know each other from Gloucester as well. And it just seemed like there's a lot more cohesion to whatever mishmash that Warren Gatland was trying to do over the last few games. So yeah, Ireland was tested. I think we can't get away from that. There's a lot of encouraging things for Wales. I mean, I think the other encouraging thing to go up front is their scrum really put Thomas Clarkson especially under pressure. Look, Nicky Smith is probably the best scrummaging loosehead in the Six Nations. I think very close to, and he's a really good experienced campaigner. He might not necessarily do as much around the field, but it seemed like Sam Warburton, I was listening to him, he was making this point that it seemed like Smith and Wilgriff John were picked basically to be like, okay, we'll put pressure on the Irish scrum because we know Ireland scrum is probably one of the few weaknesses that they have. And they did, and they're winning penalties off of that. So they really got themselves going with it. And you know what?
Just a quick
They
one on
just
Wilgriff
yeah.
John. I saw something
Yes.
on socials today that said Wilgriff John was picked in the starting lineup purely based on how he practiced last week. Apparently he
Interesting.
wasn't. Yeah, apparently he was kind of, he was there, he was in the squad. He's obviously in with a shout, but apparently he just dominated at practice, and they're like, cool, start, buddy. I like that.
Fair enough. That's how you impress a new coach, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
even Talupa Falatau looked every time I
You're
think it's the
good.
end of the road for Faletau, he always comes back with some impressive performance. He's like, okay, clearly you're going to retire at 45 or whenever you want to. So it really
He
did come
played a whole
together.
game, didn't he?
Hmm.
I'm sure he played a whole game,
Yeah,
or
80 minutes.
I mean, that's crazy. And then he was on the wing. Like I was loving it. Also bringing turnover, Tommy the turnover back. It was it
Hmm.
was great all round. It was there seemed to be a very nice sprinkle of you guys have been here, so you kind of know how crappy it can be. And then here I'm like, throw a bone to a couple of guys. Like Gareth Anscombe, come back, please. Walgrove John, you've done well. Please start for me. You know what I mean? Like he's done like
Yeah.
it seems like a lot of like a great little balance where guys are like, holy shit, I better perform because I need to. And the other guys going, wow, this is a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. It does seem like there's less now things to worry about for Wales. Obviously, they just have to back it up. I mean, I don't think the Scotland and England games are foregone conclusions. Like, I think those are games Wales, if they perform at the same level and either of those two sides have a bad day, like they can sneak away with a win here. So hopefully they can back it up at that for that sense. Sean, what was your thoughts on before we really get into Ireland? What was your thoughts on the red card?
It's a stone cold red.
Mm,
Stone. I really don't think, and I didn't really see anyone moan about it. But that was a straight up red. There was no mitigation. He's gone in to smoke him. To be fair, like Ringrose has been coming in and just absolutely chopping people down in those exact situations the whole tournament, whether it's out wide or at 13. But it was a stone cold red. We definitely I definitely want to push the boat out there and say like this 20-minute red card's a load of horse shit because
yeah.
Bundy Aki came on and absolutely dominated, and
Yeah.
there's so much what ifs. And the thing is, to be fair, like I saw guys complaining about um Peter Mahoney starting and Aki benching and stuff like that. I don't have an issue with that, those midfielders, because you can interchange them in any which way you want, which is an unbelievable place to be. But Ireland have definitely gone with a kind of a second string side with, but not, if you understand, like there's a couple of guys there
Yeah.
that are playing to give other guys rest, which
Yes.
is such an amazing position to be in. But that red card was an absolute red card. It was a red card before they brought in the bunker. It was a red card before, you know, they brought in like mitigation and all that. That's just a straight up red card. Like there's just no doubt about it.
Yeah. I think he did slip a little bit, but yeah, I don't think that's even enough mitigation. Like
No,
I
but
don't
you're
think there's
coming
too
in that
many
hard.
ultimates there. Yeah.
You're
And
coming in
high.
that hard, and you're not like, there's a whole bunch of other things before that slip. He's come in hard. He's coming to absolutely tackle him outside his boots, which he needed to do, and he's been doing that well, to be honest.
Yeah.
And he's got it wrong, but that's the risk you take. Like if you go in and you set yourself as a defender, you will probably make a better tackle, but it won't be it'll be a dominant carry, so you kind of lose a little bit of you lose a meter or two, which matters. So you come in and you Gary Ringrose is very good at picking that absolute sprint up and smoke the shit out of you tackle.
Yeah.
And that kills momentum. It generally results in a turnover. And he's got it wrong. Like, yeah, it's just the way it is. It's not a case of, what must he do? Like if you're gonna go in at that speed with that velocity to take someone, like to hit someone backwards, and you get it wrong, it's gonna result in this. That's just simply the way it is.
Yeah. Sean, yeah, ultimately Ireland obviously did win, and they had a rough, especially post that red card. It did look like it was going to be rough going, and they came through at the end. To me, you mentioned one ingredient, Banyaki. Not bad. You can bring on a player like Banyaki when you have a red card, which shows how ridiculous maybe this rule is. But I think the second thing was between Prendergast and Gibson Park. in terms of their field kicking and their tactical kicking, they got it absolutely spot on in the last 30 minutes. It just seemed like they really didn't give Wales any chance to play much of the game in their territory. And those are the things that are really important, especially if you want to, win a game like that. Because, yes, Wales had a lot of improvement, but in terms of now getting the try when you need to get a try, I mean, Wales is probably still a few more games and weeks and maybe even years from that. So I was really impressed. I mean, there's I'm sure there's also a lot of debate on X about Sam Prendergast, but I was really impressed by how well him and Gibson Park controlled the game with their kicking.
Prendergast, the more he plays, the more you can see why he's starting. I would love to know what Crowley has done to not get minutes, to not get a start, because I still don't necessarily agree with it. Prendergast in the last 20 minutes, I thought was excellent. He made quite a few errors. There was quite a few turnovers on his part. I know his tackle, his tackle completion wasn't ideal. Generally, he's still growing into that role in that space, but I thought the way he finished that game is what you want out of your fly half, and
Mm,
he really, it was almost as if, like, Gibson Park and Bundy Aki have just said to him, "Listen, we've got this, but this is what we need from you. You've got what it takes to do it. Just chill and go do it." Not that he needed it, but he really, a switch was flicked, and he really changed it up. Like, he is just, his kicking from hand is excellent. I think his passing is brilliant. He's still making mistakes, but he was really good. That last 20 minutes, you expect him to be getting tired. It's almost like he kind of recharges after a big tackle or a mistake. Some guys, you can get in their face and in their head a little bit. He doesn't seem. He seems to shake that off. He seems to kind of grow
yeah.
in every game, like every minute, especially towards the end. His last 20 minutes were incredible. But having said that, I still, what must Crowley do? Like, has he been practicing that badly? Did he swear at someone, or is it just because he wears red in the URC?
Woo! Sean is team Munster here. So hopefully we get a few more views from Limerick and we get less views from Dublin now. Um, yeah, look, I mean, the tackling is an issue. Like, I am happy he's at least getting himself there. I think there's a scale of bad fly half tacklers. Like, you can have the one that is at least getting himself there and is at least kind of stopping people before they like as they're trying to tackle them, like at least be a little bit of a speed hump if you're going to be nothing else. And then you have the ones that you have to either hide or almost are choosing to hide away from tackling. And I think Sam is at least trying to get himself there, but I mean, it was the try, I think, from, was it me? Yeah, where Blaine Murray just ran around him. That was obviously quite poor, and he just got caught
Eight from
flat-footed.
8 from 16, eh? He missed the
Yeah,
eight. He made
that's
eight. Yo.
that's not good.
And he
That
conceded
is not good.
4 turnovers, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just checking. Three
Hmm.
turnovers. So he conceded more turnovers than anyone, and he missed more tackles than anyone by some way. Like, those numbers alone, and you're just like, listen, bud, you're probably like, if 10, 10, 10 URC games or 5 URC games away from getting another look see. Like, but then he goes and switches on for the last 20 minutes, and you're like, that's why we got you here.
Yeah, I think, to me, I guess to take so much an opposite view of, I think there's enough that shows the potential of where he can go, and you know, get him and Crowley. But obviously, Crowley had
Yes.
2024, but get him to that point where he can get to 30 test matches, for a World Cup, for, being able to play at that high level.
It's
And
not like
you
Crowley's
can sort of do
38
it.
years old. they've
Excuse
both
me?
got the same ceiling. It's not like Crowley's
Yeah.
38 years old and you're not going to see him next year. They've both got the
Yeah.
same ceiling. Like they literally both are going to be part of Ireland and maybe the British and Irish Lions moving forward. You know what I mean? It's not like it's so bizarre.
Yeah. I think, maybe, I mean, I would have put Crowley on, I think, with 20 minutes to go, definitely. But like we said
Yes.
now, Prendergast played amazingly in those last 20 minutes, so you can't really fault. I mean, the decision came off. But yeah, I think there's there's enough that you see, I think, an attack with the tactical kicking that you're like, oh, this is fantastic. Defense can be worked on, and I think I don't know, he still feels like, I mean, maybe it's because he's still young and he kind of looks still so gangly. I think he's still growing into his body. Like,
Yes.
his body will settle at some stage where he doesn't look like an awkward giraffe. And I think that will
He's
improve.
big, eh?
Yeah, he's too tall almost. Like, but I think once he grows into his body, the speed will improve, the physicality will improve, and I mean, I think he plays a lot flatter for Leinster than he does for Ireland. But I think he'll be coach will be more willing to put him flatter, like almost like how Sexton was near the end of his career, where Sexton was absolutely flat because he backed himself that by the time Peter Steph, Dutoy, or Courtney Laws was about to smoke him, he would make the pass or the kick that was necessary. So
Mm.
I think he will almost grow into that role. Yeah, I think, but yeah, there's big credit, and I mean, having Gibson Park inside, having Aki or Henshaw outside, I think that's helped him a lot. The Yeah, I mean, obviously Ireland will, they did get away from, or sort of get away with it somewhat at the end. I think two things they'll come out of this being a bit concerned about. Number one was the scrum. I mean, it seems like it's touch and go if Todd Furlong's going to be available for the France game. Obviously, we saw what France did to Italy, and that scrum will be under pressure if Clarkson has to play a lot of minutes, or can Porter play 70, 75 minutes at loose head like he usually does. I think the second thing for Ireland is they will it so they won the Six Nations in 2023, the Grand Slam, and it almost felt like every game they were playing almost their low points they were playing at 8 out of 10, and their high points they were almost at 11 out of 10. Here their low points seem like they're like 4 5 out of 10, and they do
Mm.
give teams a chance. And I mean, France themselves aren't really perfect. We'll talk about them a bit later. But I mean, if you have a bit of a low moment, like they've had in the Scotland game, the England game, and the Wales game, if you have that low moment against France and they're clicking, that's 28 points.
Yeah.
Versus maybe with Wales, you concede 10 or 15 points. Like a really good team, the France, the Springboks, All Blacks, they can really punish you. And yeah, I don't know if it's just they are also kind of, in between things, Easter Bees sort of their caretaker coach and all that sort of stuff. But they really need to fix that for the game against France.
Yeah, I think importantly, Tom O'Toole had a pretty decent game for Ireland A, if I'm not mistaken. I saw little bits and pieces of it.
Yeah, I played with
He,
Lucid.
yeah, he's got to be in the Ireland mix for me. I'm a big fan. I think he's got what it takes. But you're right. I never really thought of it. Like I love that highs number versus that lows number. I really
Mhm.
like the way you've put that because it it's quite clear we've seen Ireland recently kind of stumble in a few places, and that's that low point where they they're still good enough to get over the line, but when they run into a big side and they have a low point, which we've seen with the Springboks, like you've seen it where they play well, but then the Springboks like failed their first 20 minutes of a second half for like a year. It was the worst thing in the world. So like Ireland are still good enough to get over it and whatever, but like if they don't do it against France, they're gonna come like they're gonna come short, and we'll see it. And then all these questions are going to be asked seriously, but not as hypotheticals. Um, but yeah, it's interesting times ahead for them. It's really important to lift yourself up for big games. There was a stage where we only ever played our rugby against the All Blacks. Like they were our team.
Mm.
The All Blacks was everyone's final. Ireland are everyone's final now. Like,
Yeah.
and France, like you've got to be on your game. The Springboks are everyone's final, but everyone knows the Springboks can lose one or two here and there. I almost feel like you kind of expect the Springboks to kind of fall short somewhere, where Ireland, you expect them to win everything. That's what Ireland have kind of said to themselves. The French want to win everything, and if they lose, it's not the end of the world. But when Ireland lose, you're going to be like, whoa, hang on a second. What's going on? You need to make changes. It's a very different kind of landscape. It's quite interesting.
Yeah. And very quickly, sort of quick shout outs in a way. Jamie Osborne, I thought was great at 15. Like, obviously, we saw him in the South Africa tour. He was really good. He was great again, coming in for Hugo Keenan. I really would, I don't, like, I mean, obviously, Ireland have three great centers. I think there's no reason to play the third centre on the bench. Just play Jamie Osborne as like the third backline reserve in most of the games. I think
Mhm.
he's such a great dynamic replacement, and obviously he can play in the midfield, he can play in the back three. I think it gives the team more, and I think I mean Ringrose. I think for me Ringrose is probably the player that falls out if I'm trying to pick my best centre combination for a game. Um, I think Ringrose versus Osborne might be something to look at for the next few weeks. I mean, okay, Ringrose will probably be banned for for the next few weeks. Also, some love for Josh van der Fleer. Like, I'm hearing too much about Jack Morgan or Ben Earl or Tom Curry or Rory Dodge for Line 7. I mean, I don't think Josh van der Fleer's done anything wrong. I think he's pretty much played to the same level, if not outplayed most of those guys when he's played against them. Like, I don't know what more Josh needs to do.
He's he's very much he's kind of like Dupont was last year or the year before. You know, when he's just always so good that you just can't always give him man of the match. Someone else has to get it, or you know what I mean. Um,
Mm.
he's excellent. I definitely want to dive deep into the conversation about you thinking that Ringrose needs to get dropped. Or maybe you didn't say needs to get dropped, but you can do without him. It's very
Mm.
interesting because he was like the cornerstone of the Irish backline and the Irish defense for so long. Henshaw's
Yeah.
hit a bit of form. Aki's kind of carrying on. You kind of figured this year was more going to be maybe a Henshaw and a Ringrose, but it hasn't worked out that way.
No.
Ringrose on defense is excellent. He links well. Um, you know, I spent like 3 years having a go at him, and now I'm warming up to him, and now you want to drop him. So I feel like I've got to stand up for him. But I don't think the thing is the one thing about Ringrose is he can play 12, he can play 13 as we know, but he can also play on the wing. And that's what keeps him in the side for me. Bundy Aki is an out and out 12, so I don't think we'll see Bundy Aki on the bench. Like, let's say this is a knockout game or two against the Springboks 2-2, and you're playing for bragging rights. I don't think Aki is on the bench. I think he starts. And Henshaw plays 12 and 13, and you at a push you can have him somewhere else. So they've got enough balance there. They've got enough experience. I think at least until the end of the next World Cup, Ringrose comfortably stays there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you can see with form, and obviously, I think all three of them are just have turned 30. So maybe some people's form or whatever tails off. But I think right now, yeah, for the Six Nations game, well, let's say Ringrose was available, but for the France game, I'm going Aki Henshaw, 12-13, and I think I would personally go with Osborne on the bench, especially because of that impact I think he gives on both sides of the ball. I mean, Osborne made a good read, defensively when he did it. He shot up, I think, on, was it me or was it Murray? But basically, it was going to be a 2-on-1 situation if he didn't nail that tackle. And obviously, Ringrose is the master of that. But I think because Ireland doesn't necessarily play, they haven't really gone full on Jacques Nienaber rush defense. They still they're still a bit more sort of like passive and drift a bit more than what Leinster do at the moment. I Yeah, I don't think it's like you need Ringrose in that case as much as you would here. But yeah, I mean, no, I'm not saying Ringrose must now be put into a retirement home. I'm just saying right now, form wise, Jamie Osborne, I would be making place for him in the match 23. So, but yeah, I think he had a great performance on Saturday. He was solid on the high ball. He was great in the counter attack. He kicks really well. I mean, I think he's almost like the long term James Lowe replacement in some ways because he's got that left boot that has bailed Ireland out in big moments as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how he grows in his career too. Sean, should we move to the Calcutta Cup? Um, Unfortunately,
Yes.
we have finally England has broken through and they've won the Calcutta Cup after 5 years, beating Scotland 16 points to 15. I mean, if I told you the match summary, Scotland scores 3 tries, England scores one, you would think, okay, Scotland got away with it again and they won the Calcutta Cup in Twickenham, but unfortunately, a mix of things. I mean, Scotland probably had, I think it was 12-22 entries. Um, they didn't obviously make their conversion kicks, and England was able to just get enough points when they were, in Scotland territory. So maybe let's start by being. I mean, there's a lot of things to say to Scotland, but let's start with being complimentary of the winners. Look, Sean, last year we were saying England was losing games they probably should have won. And now I think it's almost the opposite, where I'm almost less impressed than I was last year because I'm like, I feel like they should have lost that game and they're winning. So it's those that scale is balancing out. But yeah, I mean, there's still obviously issues, but I mean, it's good that they're actually winning these games because that's not what they were doing in November, for example, last year.
I disagree wholeheartedly. I'm
Ooh.
so pissed off. Um, so you're gonna have to help me with my words. I don't think Steve Borthwick has got what it takes to do this. Not with
Mm,
the personnel that he's got. I like it's almost so this is where I'm going to struggle with trying to describe what's going on. It's almost like a Jekyll and Hyde vibe, like he's naming a team that he names, but then he wants them to play differently. So
mm.
my issue is I really don't feel that the side that he named it that beat France is a sustainable team and game plan to play long term. I don't
Yeah,
think that you can win a lot of games in Test rugby with that side and that game plan. He
I
then
agree.
went and named the same side, and then it felt like it was a different game plan, which you can't play with that side. So he's kind of like, I think Steve Borthwick is very conservative. I think he's very much by the numbers. Like, I would rather you just made 13 of 13 tackles than made 11 of 13 tackles, but 10 of them were dominant and your two missed ones resulted in a line break. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's very
Mhm.
conservative. He has probably, I think England have some of the best resources now in terms of actual players, like individuals that can play multiple game plans. They like a lot of guys that can play good test match rugby, but he has the ability in his squad to play a tighter game, a bigger ball carrying game. He has the ability to play loose and wide. He's got players like Marcus Smith who can play 10 or 15. He's got guys like Chandler Cunningham South who I don't think, as much as I love him, he's almost on my chopping block at the moment because I don't think he's making the impact he should. But there's no doubt that he's talented. He's got a guy like Ted Hill who's not really getting a look in. He was put on for 8 seconds, but then ended up playing 3 minutes because the game went on. Like, he's got players that can do stuff. He's named a loose trio of open side flankers, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They've got Chessum and they've got oh, flip, his name
Martin.
escapes me, Martin, who's injured. Like, he's got it, but I don't think that he can do it on a tactical point of view. for me, a coach. It's important for a coach to use his bench fully. Um, it is very clear that again, it's not sustainable in long term. Like, let's talk World Cup winning here. Like, if you want to win a World Cup, like, you can't do it. You can't just do it with 23 players. You need to do it with 30 something players. But he's all the time, he's not playing his bench. And I moaned about it big time with the All Blacks last year. The other thing is, I thought Marcus Smith could, if you were going to sub him, Saturday was the time to do it, because I don't think he was really unleashing what he needed to unleash. It wasn't really working. He has options there in that Elliot Daly can play 15. Finn Smith can play 15. And I know that opens up your 10. You can always move Marcus Smith to 10 or whatever. There's options there. And the other thing is, I really, Harry Randall is stealing a living. I think you've got other nines as options. Jack van Poortvliet played for the A side this weekend. I remember, to be fair, I haven't been watching him too much, but I think he's in enough form that he could kind of be on the bench. We all saw what he brought for England in the World Cup year. Spencer, like, I know all these players I'm naming are all Bath players, but like, the guys, they've got options to really do something. With Tom Curry being injured, and I know Ben Curry came on and had a great game, but with Curry being injured in 46 minutes, you put Ben Curry on, that's fine. But Willis had already come off. Ben Curry was on already then, sorry, I think. I can't remember how to work. But Ted Hill, that man would have come on and played blindside flank, and he would have dominated. He's a massive human being. He's got great hands. He's ridiculously fast. He can play tight and loose. Like, I just don't understand it. I just don't think he's willing. I think he's too scared to venture out into the open. Don't know how the saying goes. Like, you will never, I don't know, see the world if you never take your eyes off the coast or the shoreline or whatever. And that's the issue. Jamie George must start. Count Dickey, his darts are not great. His darts are a little off, but his carries and his tackles are pretty decent. He will put in a shitty tackle and he will get sent off for it. Jamie George has got to start. There's Curtis Langdon, who needs to get a look in for me. I really think he's a dynamic player. You know what I mean? Like, what is the word? Is it a Jekyll and Hyde? I don't think it's a Jekyll and Hyde. I just think he's too scared to, like, is he bipolar as a coach? Does he name the side on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then Saturday comes and he's like, oh shit, what did I do? I wasn't on my meds. Okay, guys, we're going to play really tight. And everyone's like, what? I don't know.
I think with regards to the selection, I think he felt like he had to give the team that beat France basically another game. Yeah, because I'll defend Borthwick here. I think there's some method to the madness. Okay,
I understand that. I do understand that.
Okay, this weekend I think he was almost like, can't really drop anyone. Let me go with the same team, because I think he's been pretty good at adjusting for different teams. Like, I think he adjusted well, like, to South Africa, like in the 2 times he's played them. He's adjusted well to Ireland with having, the 3 open side flankers in the loose trio. With France, I think that's why he played Marcus Smith at 15. He was like, look, France doesn't kick contestables, they kick long. So it actually makes more sense to have a fullback that can run and sort of start the counter-attack themselves. I mean, South Africa did the same in 2022 when they picked Ches and Colby at 15. So I was like, okay, I mean, I think Borthwick is similar to, I mean, obviously his coaching, like, he's from the Eddie Jones coaching tree, so to speak. Eddie Jones was the same, of, I will pick this player just for this particular test. I think that in terms of, what are they sort of playing at? I mean, look, I've said in this podcast a few times, I don't think England plays their best if they don't have all 3 of Itoje, Martin, and Chesham on the field. I think that gets their lineout to be a lot more solid. It gives them the physicality, but Chesham and Itoje are they play like sixes anyway, so it gives them the mobility. Where Martin is is almost like, the Miafus and the
Yes.
Taifefunuas, who are big physical brutes but can't really jump in a line out. So, but on the other hand, though, to give him his credit, I think England's been really good defensively at slowing down rug ball because they have, two Curries, Ben Earl usually on the field, especially in the second half. So I'm kind of coming around to that selection, being like, okay, you are risking it a lot with the line out. And, you look at their line out stats, they don't throw at the back. Like, if you look at the Opta stats, their line out in terms of, how much they throw at the back, they're at the lowest by far, them in Wales, who also don't really have a blindside, a real blindside flanker. That's why they played Rafael and Morgan this weekend. But they've been able to sort of keep the water keep the water out of the house and not let the flooding come in, so to speak. Even with playing Jamie George on the bench, I think it's like, well, we've been getting crapped on in the last 20 minutes last year, especially against the All Blacks and the Springboks and everyone. So why not have Jamie George, um, you know, Ben Curry, Elliot Daly, I guess, so to speak, those players coming on from the bench to make that impact the last 20 minutes. But I do agree with you. I think Ted Hill could have come on and helped, but maybe he was just like, okay, he is a bit of a test rookie. You don't want to throw him in a game like that. And yeah, I mean, I
Ted
don't get
Hill,
Harry Randall.
Ted Hill, while I hear you on him being relatively test green, he last got his test cap. It was many years ago. It was a few years ago.
Like
But
three, I
he's the
think. Yeah.
form blindside flank in the Premiership.
Mm,
Like, the thing is, as much as you say he changes his game plan for France because they kick long, is all the more reason not to have Marcus Smith at 15 for this game. And
yeah.
he's stuck between going, I must reward you guys for playing well. Listen, this is not Super League A and you performed against Marty's and now you've got UCT on the Green Mile. This is not that. Like, you're a big boy. This is test match rugby. This is your plan. Marcus Smith, you are here against France because of those long kicks. Yes, great stuff. Cool. Marcus Smith, you're going to stay at 15 this weekend against Scotland. What exactly is the reason for that? Well, kind of because you played well against France in that game plan. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
if they said, Marcus Smith, you can go back to 10, Finn Smith can bench, people are going to shit the bed. People are going to shit the bed regardless. Like, we're shitting the bed because they played the same game with the same team and they were very different. So you got to make a decision. And Borthwick is like, and that's coaching for me. Like, if they had changed that side against Scotland, I reckon Scotland would have been like, whoa, hang on a second, what is going on here? We all knew that you knew how to attack them. We all knew that they were going to be a menace at the breakdown, but you've got a contest here and here. Um, Scotland already did exceptionally well by bringing in Richie, who I thought probably won't be getting that many more test matches because
Me too. Yeah.
and he was cooking. So
Mm.
they've picked where the problem is and they've nailed it. Like, Scotland nailed it. They just couldn't put it together afterwards. But England, for me, you make those changes. If Borthwick made changes and England played better, you cannot bullshit. Like, I don't even know what I was trying to say. You cannot have a go at him. Like, he will just turn around to you and tell you it's bullshit because they have a game plan. And he's really also stuck in a space of like, can I get all the good guys on at once? That seems to me like leaving Marcus Smith on because I love Marcus Smith, but he just didn't have his best game. And I thought there was times when they really needed someone else or something else to change. On the bench, I agree with you. I do agree with you. I think having Jamie George off the bench is great. Please then start Curtis Langdon for me. I just want to see something. Like,
It sounded like he played pretty well for England, eh? I didn't watch the game, but it
I
sounds like he had good reviews.
he's just watch him in the Premiership this year and last year. Like,
Mm.
he's good. His lineouts are good, but he's like he's almost like a Marchand kind of a player. Like, he's not a Malvaka or He's almost in the Malcolm Marx space but that's a little bit more loose, a little bit more. So he's kind of a Malcolm Marx Malvaka hybrid in that he can get stuck into the tight stuff, but he's really good in open play. So I just want to see him. And also, I if England had lost on Saturday, I would have only been moaning about Randall, which I have an unhealthy hate watch against that guy. I just think the same reason why you have Jamie George coming off the bench is probably the reason why you don't want Harry Randall coming off the bench. Like, do me a favor. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not happy. A friend of mine is English, and he was spitting. He was just like, it feels like a loss. He said, I wish we had lost so we can address some real issues. Because, you know, that French win, I personally think, and it's great for us as South Africans and anyone playing England, is I think will paper over the cracks. I really do. Um, I think Borthwick's got to stick to what he is really good at and use what he has learned from the French win and from this Scotland win, and you'll take the bad out of the Scotland win. You can use that and you still play your big guys and do your things. He's got the personnel to do it. But yeah, I just think I just think they stuffed it. I really think they stuffed it.
Yeah, look, England's such an interesting team, I think, to look at right now because when you look at their stats, again, going to Opta stats, I think you can see some of the issues that they have. So I think in terms of the positives, I think they've fixed their scrum by having Will Stewart start. Like their scrum, I think has looked really good. I think Ellis Genge continues to grow as a loose head. Like he's not, he's was probably maybe a liability 4 or 5 years ago, but he's at least solid. Like he won't be pushed back. And with Baxter and Hayes, they are able to at least keep their momentum up. We talked about the line out. It's at this moment it's okay, just get the ball out so we can just play from there. It's not really much of a strength. Their attack, so they are at the highest for committing for gain like success and for committing tacklers. Like they're at the highest for getting like players like committed to them. Like they're the most effective ball carriers at the moment. But they don't really offload, and their attacking shape is so like nothing really goes wide for them. So they really struggle with creating those opportunities in order to actually get points on the board. And then their defense, I think, as a negative, like their defense is just. I think they fixed things during the game because it did really look like Scotland was just going, "Where's Marcus Smith? Where's Alex Mitchell? We know you hide them out wide.
100%.
Let's run at them."
100%.
And to be fair to them, they largely fixed it. But I also think that's more because Scotland couldn't have. Well, Jack Dempsey didn't finish the game, and I think basically once he went out, they didn't have someone that could just carry the ball up, commit numbers in the midfield, and then be able to create the space so that you have Duan or Kinghorn or whoever one on one against some of those tacklers that they have out wide. So yeah, I mean, I think you're right. There's somewhat of a papering over the cracks, and yeah, I hope for their sakes that they don't delude themselves into thinking like, okay, everything is fine now. And I mean, look, they did. I mean, we were talking about this being a note from three type of start, possibly, and I mean, it was pretty close to being, to be fair. But they have now played all their tough games. I still think, though, geez, I mean, Italy and Wales could cash them out if they're not careful, number one. Number two, I think, like you said, Sean, there is definitely some selection things that have to be, I think, sorted out between them. So, yeah, are we just, yeah, like, Sean, maybe you are right. Maybe they should try Ted Hill at 6 because he then does
Or
solve
Martin.
the whole. Yeah, I mean, look,
Martin played
the
so well
problem
there.
is,
Like
well, he was
they've
injured, I think, this weekend.
no, you're right, he was, but they've got the people. That's my thing. It's not like they
Yeah,
don't have a blindside flank. They've got two and a half because Itoje can play there. You can
yeah,
have Martin and Chessum playing lock, and Itoje at 6. You can rotate all three of them on blindside. Like Hill doesn't have to play. It pisses me off that he was in the team and didn't play. Like that pisses me off
Mm.
because this was his chance. Like it was his chance. It's the same as Spencer. I really thought this was Spencer's Six Nations. If I think I might have mentioned it before it kicked off. Like this was his chance to really cement him as the starting nine. But he's just not like there are guys that are good enough and they're just not getting a look in. And it's freaking me out.
I think the question, I guess, for them becomes if I don't think they have any other locks basically after Itoje, Chisholm, and Martin. Like, I don't think they trust. I don't know who's even next, Alex Coles or Isekwe or whoever enough for that. So, okay, you maybe want to pick one of them off the bench. Maybe then you say, okay, either Martin or Chisholm, you guys are going to be on, one of you's on the bench. Then, like you said, it makes sense to pick Hill at 6. I think they play well in the first half because they have Tom Willis at 8 instead of now going maybe full committed to this 3 open side thing. But I also think to sort of balance that and to be fair to Borthwick, they now have the gen. I mean, I think almost 10 years ago they had too many sixes, but now they have a lot of nice sevens, and you kind of can't blame him for playing all of those sevens at the same time. I mean, you can't really blame him for playing Earl. Tom Curry, I think, is in really good form. Ben Curry's been really good coming onto the game as
He's
well, and
been
I
my surprise. Ben
he's
Curry.
been he's been really really good. So
Yeah.
you're like, okay, you kind of, I mean, just on form and just on the base that you have all these players available, you kind of can't really blame him. But obviously you might not just be as lucky with maybe some of the things that getting away with some of the things that they have gotten away with so far in the games. So England, in terms of 22 entries, England has allowed the highest number of 22 entries in their games, which totally checks out on the eye test. I think Scotland and France had more than enough chances to put England away, but they've also conceded the second lowest points or tries from those 22 entries, which means you're playing a dangerous game. Like, you're kind of, you're playing a bit of, trying to run across traffic on the N1. Like, you're doing enough to dodge the cars, but there will be a game where those stats kind of balance out. Like, you can't, like, obviously that's not a sustainable thing for them to do in the future. So the thing is with England, you fix one thing, it causes another problem. So I think, especially in that second half against France, the Smith axis, the double Smith axis, worked well for the attack. It got Lawrence into the game. It got their wings into the game. But Smith's not great in defense. But if you put Stewart there, obviously Stewart's not really good in defense, doesn't give that playmaker option. Furbank is probably the best of both worlds, but Furbank is not really the best player under the high ball. So, if an Ireland or South Africa targets him on that, that's a problem. The sixth thing we've talked about, I think we've talked about the midfield quite a few times, and I mean, I think Slade is the best proponent of like this sort of rush defense, but and he's been helping as a second playmaker. But now you're really relying on him playing at 12. Maybe it's not really his natural position. Are you getting Lawrence onto the ball enough? Are you using the options that you have out wide? Are they getting enough ball? And I don't think they are. So it's some I think I don't yeah I think that one thing I do disagree with what you said earlier was I don't think England has all the players that they need for I think what they want to do or what they're trying to do. Is coaching maybe an issue? For sure. I don't think Borthwick and their coaches are getting enough from them attack wise, but I do think, and we'll probably talk about this each and every time, until they fix the problems at 12, they've kind of fixed it at 8. 6, we've obviously talked about a few options there, and 15, you are always going to have like this sort of jigsaw puzzle team, and you're going to have a puzzle of like, let's say a puzzle of 100 pieces, but you're going to have 10 pieces that are lying around your house that you can't really find.
Yeah, it's so Slade has been in ridiculous form. He really Slade has been the form 10 and the most consistent, the form back and the most consistent back that they've had by far this season. But yeah, I think you're right. I think they're a bit thin. Like if you look at their squad has only got Chesham and Martin and Itoje as locks. That's it. That's all in their squad. So Hill is a blindside flank, and he was there to cover 4, which I'm also not a fan of doing. Like, so obviously he was good enough to do it, but then you don't play him. But it's yeah, this 12 discussion, I still don't change my opinion on it. I think I agree totally. I think they're struggling at. They don't have a big guy that's going to take it up. They don't use Lawrence enough for it, or
Mm.
I would like to see him swap around more and just run like an inside, like an unders line from 12
And
almost.
he, sorry to interrupt you, Sean, but he did like once or twice on Finn, and that caused that line break at the end
Yes.
of the half. He got through Russell, got the pass to Smith, and they should have scored from there, obviously. Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, great, you're running at Finn Russell. He's not the best 10 defender in the world. Do that more. They did it one more time, and then they were like, okay, we've had enough. We'll start kicking from now. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to milk something like that until it's finished. You can't try it a couple times and go, okay, they're going to be used to it. So did they do that? And Blair Kinghorn then stood narrower because he was trying to cover that and therefore kicked. I don't know. If they did it because of that, then well done to Kinghorn because he protected his 10. But they do have to change a few things up there. Like they do have someone like Freeman who's played 13 before, and I'm not saying he must start at 13. I'm just saying he can run it up through traffic. I really think they can use him more. He's in great form. He's also a massive guy. I think they should use him a lot more. The other thing I've just seen, Harry Randall's 27. Like, can we just get rid of him now? Yes, this is like the Harry Randall hate pod. I just like I think they've got other options, and you're right. You're right about 12, but what I will say is Slade is cooking. They also don't have another player in their current squad that is going to be a nice hard running 12. Like Freddie Stewart would be brilliant at it if only someone else would
Mhm.
see it. Like imagine Freddie Stewart playing at 12. Oh,
The Jordy Barrett conversion. But yeah, so I think that's the difficult thing with England. And look, I mean, we say all of this, they still won. And they won, I
yes.
think, through number one, just not I mean, maybe you can say maybe they kicked too much, but they just made life tougher for Scotland because Scotland had to, you know, they had to be the ones initiating things. They weren't really giving Scotland the mistakes to be like, okay, well, you can sort of like profit from our mistakes. Their defense is just about keeping teams out. You would like for them to not concede 3+ tries every game, which they have so far. I think in each game they've conceded 3 or 4 tries so far, and these are obviously the three other big like top teams in the championship. So you need to improve that, but it's still enough for you to win. And they're able to just get enough points when they do visit the 22. Like they'll need to score obviously more than just one try. They'll need to, improve those sort of things. But, there is like I think the one thing I'll say is I think there are less problems that England had than they did maybe end of last year. They slowly but surely crossing them out. Like I said earlier, Will Stewart, I think, coming he's coming through as a quality tight head, international level tight head, and Hayes and Baxter back them up at prop. Um, I think they're getting more from Ben Curry as we talked about earlier. They're getting something from Tom Willis, and he's proved that he can at least be at this international level. Finn Smith, I think, has been really good and showed okay he can run things at 10. And yeah, we'll need to have a conversation about this 10 situation because this Marcus Smith solution 15, I think we're both on the same page. It's not the solution long term. So there's good things. It's just now about putting it together. But yeah, I think this could have been worse for Borthwick because it could have been, you know, narrow losses, and now it's 0 from 3, and then I think it will be close to, like, Borthwick out type of conversation. So at least we should give them some credit for that. For Scotland, Sean, they didn't take their chances. I think that's the simple fact of the matter. They got pretty much all they wanted from attack. All of their backline players, or a lot of their backline players, they all had crazy numbers in terms of defenders beaten and meters gained and breaks and all that sort of stuff. Duan van der Merwe and Hugh Jones seem to just team up when they face England and say, "We hate the English. We're going to show them." But yeah, you can't have all of those 22 entries. You can't get all the tries that they got, especially in the first half, and not convert them because it'll bite you in the butt in a test match.
Yeah, they're going to be kicking themselves, and it's my issue with Scotland last year. It was last year. It was or kind of in between last year and the year before. Is they were, if you remember, they were incredible at manufacturing like 50-meter line breaks from inside their half. But
Mm.
then when they got into the opposition 22, if they didn't score off that line back straight away, then
Yeah.
they would more often than not butcher it. It was a very weird thing, like, and it seemed to come back again. They were targeting Smith. I almost felt like that more often than not they weren't really creating. They weren't creating it well enough. They were very much like, here, do on go, and he had to run. Like, he didn't always run straight at him. He had to run at an angle, change, chop change, do stuff. I thought he ran pretty well through traffic generally, which we generally don't see from him. But I just thought maybe they could have manufactured it better. But it was weird. Like, I watched that whole game just looking at England, figuring out if this kind of copy paste 15 was going to play a different game plan or be as good as they were against France. And I didn't really watch enough of it. Like, there were such good standout players. Like, Richie was incredible. I thought White was good. Van der Merwe was good. Kinghorn could very close to be the standout 15 in the tournament. He's in such good form. Jordan at 12, I thought was, and another reason, I know he tackles well, but Jordan at 12 was, for me, a reason why you'd want to be sending traffic between Russell and Jordan. I really thought there was an opportunity there. And you can even, like, similar to what they did, is where you fake, where you send Lawrence down there and then you swap it up, because then it'll be, the gap will be between Jordan and Jones, and perhaps target Rowe a bit more. But yeah, Scotland will be kicking themselves. I think they definitely didn't play their best rugby. They played great rugby for lots of periods, but when they were not playing their best rugby, they didn't kind of link it together as well as they should have. And yeah, that this is going to feel like a real horrible loss. It's really going to feel bad. But yeah, I was, they should have done better. Jack Dempsey is going to go on Lions tour. I'm so happy about that. But yeah, sheesh, man. Scotland are going to be kicking themselves. Do we get to have the same conversation about Scotland coaches we did the England coach? Just be like, listen, you're papering over the cracks. Can we
I
have that same conversation?
I don't know if there's anything new to say about Scotland right now. Like, yes, they don't have Tuipulotu, and I think that hurts a lot because you look at their, like, carry stats, they just are not the strongest carriers. Like, they have the lowest percentage of dominant carries. They have the lowest or second lowest game line success. Only Wales has a low one. Um, they don't really, like, they're not able to create enough. Like, they are second lowest to Wales for percentage of line breaks leading to a try. Like, they're just not
I know.
having an attack that is really engaging defenders well enough. And
To be fair, Tuipulotu does that at 12, especially when
that's
you
yeah,
replace him with someone like Jordan.
that's bingo. That is pretty much the point. You know, and I think Dempsey was doing that in the first half. I guess he was injured. I hope he was injured for Townsend's sake, because once Dempsey went off, it just felt like the Scotland attack was trying to do a few things. They're trying to sort of get these fancy, like, you know, the attack structure was trying to get something going, but they just weren't, like you said, they weren't really able to make those clean breaks or line breaks and really put pressure on the England defense. It was only when they did that move between Jordan and McDowell that they really were able to break, break England open. And you need that person to carry just to get you over the gain line. And again, that's where, and yeah, we'll see obviously how far Matt Sherratt can take Wales in the next few games. But that's where you're looking at England, Scotland, and you look at Wales and the improve they had in a week with their attack, and all three of those countries are in a similar position of they don't really have too many big ball carriers. They don't really have like, you know, a Miafu or a Bandiaki or a Mofana or even a Menoncello for Italy that is able to make meters almost all by themselves. So you're like, okay, well, Wales can do these things and have the highest amount of defenders beaten and all that sort of stuff against Ireland of all teams. What's the question here? England and Scotland, same coach for the last 3 years for England, same coach for, I don't know, the last decade for Scotland. So what is the issue? And yeah, I think that's where it's like, okay, Scotland did a Scotland. Like the moment was there for them to take this game. They didn't take it because that's just what Scotland does when the moment comes to them. And again, I think the defense was fine. Like we said, Richie played pretty well. I think they didn't really give England too many opportunities. But England, once they got themselves onto the board, they got that try. They were able to get points from penalties and capitalize on the mistakes Scotland made. They didn't have to you know create big things and score tries. And that's the thing with Scotland. Like they're fine up until they get played against like a elite or just below elite level team. And then you just realize, okay, great, you have this awesome backline. You don't really have the forwards. Another thing though that frustrates me about Scotland is you pick a 6-3 bench. Why are three of your forwards only coming on after 65 minutes? What's the point then of having a
Yes.
6-3 bench?
Yeah,
6-2 bench, sorry.
100%. Do you know the other thing you talk about, like when Dempsey came off, Matt Ferguson? I thought it was unlucky that he got dropped. As much as I'm a Dempsey fan,
Mm.
I think he's brilliant.
Yeah.
Matt Ferguson's been in form. You would expect it to ramp up from where it was after Dempsey started and then tapered off, and then you bring on Ferguson because Ferguson's been in form. So it didn't work for them. It didn't come together, and they they fell flat. They fell into a lull. It's almost like they were playing and they were like collectively they were like, oh, it's not our day today. You know what I mean? Like you play that game and you're like, it's our day. We're going to carry on. We're going to carry on. We're going to carry on. It's going to happen. A la Ireland, but like it almost like they just thought it wasn't, even though they were still in the game. It was tough. I feel for Russell. I know we haven't spoken about him. I mean, he did miss those kicks, but it's
Mhm.
almost like it almost felt like he was just trying to do everything all the time. Um, and they definitely, I like Jordan. I think Jordan's great because he can cover you at 10, at 12, at 15, but they definitely need a bigger 12. I think McDowell might get a look in at 12 next time because they need a bigger guy. It's really interesting between Jordan at 12 and McDowell at 12. Those are the only two kind of squad options now, if memory serves, unless they bring in someone else, but I doubt it. Um, but what are Scotland going to do? Like Jordan definitely punches above his weight. Like he carries hard, he tackles well, he's got a good link, but I think they might want to start McDowell, put Jordan on the bench or start Jordan at 15, put Kinghorn on the right wing, Jordan at 15, kind of interlink between
Yeah.
all of that. Like playmaker, Jordan can swing in and be a second playmaker. McDowell can just punch it hard.
Yeah, let me read a tweet from Rian Lowe during the game where he was talking about this. He was like, Tom Jordan, my dude, you're a rapier. You're not a sledgehammer. Please let Duan crash it. And I think that's. But the problem I think is that Tom Jordan, I think in his mind he thinks he's like 110 kilograms and 1.9 meters tall. Like that's how
He
he
does, eh?
plays.
He, he's
And
he's he's basically a Jack Russell.
yeah, I think no. I think he thinks. Oh yeah, I guess
He's a
Jack
Jack
Russell
Russell.
think they bulldogs, but they're not. But then someone did reply and say, "Look, to be fair, Jordan played in the back row until he was 18." And I was like, "Oh, this
Sorry,
explains
what?
everything about Tom Jordan. He was a loose
Really?
forward apparently until like high
No,
school."
no. And yes, you're 100% right. You now got live like recording of the penny dropping in my head where you like that makes sense. It makes so much sense. Yep, that's amazing. How incredible. Imagine having a player like that playing loose forward with that vision, those hands, that 10 vibe, that crazy vibe. I mean, imagine him standing in the back line off a line out and you think he's going to punch it up and there he is throwing a 50-meter loop pass.
You know what? Yeah, I think this because they. I mean, two very different players before people kill me, but I used to think the same thing about Dame Dialendi when he started playing. I was like, did you play flank until like matric and then you've been transformed to the center? And I think there's a lot of that with Tom Jordan. You're just like, no, man, you played in the loose forwards. Like, there's no way you could tell me you played like this at 10 throughout, school and everything. But yeah, like he plays bigger than what he is, which is great, I think, in this case because he's willing to do the crash ball stuff. It's not really that effective. I think the best of what Scotland did was just going wide because you now have three, four great passers in their team in the same back line. I mean, Finn is obviously a great passer, Jordan's a good passer, Kinghorn's a great passer, Jones is a good passer. So you're able to get so much width, and maybe they should have just committed more to that in the second half, especially without without Dempsey, and just go wide pretty much every phase.
Yeah.
And maybe that was the way. But yeah, I think the thing with the Scotland thing and why this conversation is tiring is that we're in the same point for Scotland. It's either you win 3 games and you beat England, or even sometimes you win 2 games and you beat England. And now it's more likely you probably get 2 wins now in the Six Nations. And it just hasn't really improved. It hasn't really changed from the last few years. You're still the third or fourth best team in the Six Nations. You're still, you know, not really getting any close to Ireland. You get the lucky win here and there against France. You obviously have that voodoo over England, but it's not really changing or improving. And it doesn't seem like the game plan is changing or improving. So, what gives? And yeah, maybe now because they've lost the Calcutta Cup, this is now where it will sort of really get fans incensed and be like, okay, it's Townsend out time. But I mean, yeah, they could have won yesterday, and I mean the conversion wasn't too far off, but it still just feels like the same Scotland thing we've been talking about for the last few years.
Wales are going to be targeting Scotland big time. That's when the shit hits the fan.
I think Wales. Yeah, I mean Wales it plays both Scotland and England. I would not be surprised if they beat one of them. Like one team might just get a bit overconfident or not play at their best, and then Wales gets a win there. I mean they play Scotland. It's Wales versus Scotland in the next round. You can see it happening, but yeah, I'm hoping for Scotland's sake. Actually, I don't really care, but yeah, you you do, if I think that would be the thing that then would really put the pressure on Townsend is if they lose to Wales. They haven't really made progress on Ireland. They haven't. I mean, they lost the Calcutta Cup and they lose to Wales. Like, yeah, that would be too much.
Oof. Oof. Be a whole new bunch of coaches just before the World Cup.
Yeah. Franco Smith, Johan van Graan, Johan Ackerman, maybe. Keep your phones on. Let's talk about
And
the.
let's not forget about Raj.
I mean, Raj might get pushed out of La Rochelle. judging by how the results are going there in the top 14.
Yeah. Did they lose at home this weekend? If it
They
wasn't
lost
at
at
home,
home
it
to
does.
Racing.
No, to Racing. What?
Yes.
What? What
Yeah.
sorcery is
And
this?
he said something along the lines of, let me not, I don't want to misquote him, but something pretty much like, I don't think the players are playing for me type of thing. And I was like,
Oh,
oh, this is trouble.
really?
Yeah, I'm not quoting him directly, but it was like I don't think the players are sort of doing what they're supposed to do thing that he said. And this was a pretty, I mean, obviously they don't have their French internationals, but this was a strong Racing side. In comparison, Racing had a few injuries. So, yeah, Rog, I kind of think it's a dip season, but yeah, this could be something to monitor. So yeah, maybe this might be the time for Australia, Wales, Scotland, whoever to give to give a call there to Rog.
Yo, life comes at you fast, eh? He was like the darling. Yo,
Yeah, I mean, kind of the same as Dobbo. I think there's some similarities.
yeah.
Like where
Yeah.
you've got the team working, you've got like this sort of newish game plan, and these players are playing above their level. But all of a sudden, teams now have the years of film now, and your best players are playing obviously internationals and domestically as well. They get tired, so now you don't have that advantage anymore of, oh, UJ Suteni, what a new player that we don't have a plan for, Mani Lebok for the Stormers case. So now it's like, okay, we've figured you out. What's your next move? And now obviously that's where I guess Ogara, even Dobbo can show their skills as coaches and be like, okay, well, we have this for you. And at the moment, it doesn't seem like they do, but we'll see. Anyway, let's talk about the final game. So this was Italy
Let's.
facing France, and France won 73 points to 24.
But tell us the most important part about this game first.
Antoine Dupont was man of the match.
You were there.
Oh, yes. So I was like, I'm not sure what you mean. But yes, I was able to actually go to this match. It was my first Six Nations game, probably goes without
Oh,
saying.
that's
And
epic.
it was it was such a fantastic experience, Sean. Like I really enjoyed getting to the game. I enjoyed like the interaction between the fans. You know, Stadio Olimpico can pull off a good show. I think the main highlights was did like a thing where they thanked Sergio Parisse at the start of the game,
Yes.
and they're like, I guess this was. I mean, I think Parisse is now officially given up on trying to play his last game. I mean, remember that his last game in the 2019 World Cup was basically rained out because of the typhoon, and then he was supposed to play a game 2020. Then it was COVID. So I think now Parisse said, okay, I'm not going to get this last Test cap.
And that was
And
it was a record cap, wasn't it?
yes, I think it would have been most for Italy, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know, but I just remember it was significant. I mean, imagine running into a World Cup typhoon and then a global pandemic. You must be like, listen, I'm just going to stick a fork in me. I'm done. I'm going to go and just go and chill because it's not
Yeah,
happening.
so they did like a basically like a video thanking him, and the crowd like stood up and clapped for him for quite a while, and I think it was him and his kids that brought on the match ball, so that was obviously very sweet. Anthems was amazing. One criticism, I mean, obviously two of the best anthems I think in world rugby. My one criticism is the Italian, I think it's their military, they have like a marching band type of thing. Can they play it like a bit faster, both anthems? Because it sort of drags a bit and it makes it a bit hard to sing. And obviously, both those anthems you kind of need to shout. So it
Show your
kind,
passion.
yeah. So it was a bit. I don't know. It defeated the purpose, but it is. I saw on Blue Sky that it does seem to be a general criticism of games in Italy that the national anthems are played too slowly. So yeah, that's maybe something for them to fix. So
Okay.
I don't know if you heard on on TV, but every time Italy scored a try in the game, they played this like I don't even know what to call it, like almost like this techno song. um,
Hmm.
when Italy scores, and that's like basically like their celebration song. And I hope I get this right. It's called La Morte Jo, and it's basically like this is their song now when they score. Like Sweet Caroline's been the song for 50 years running in South Africa, and so obviously they are like Italy scored the first try, well the first valid try or what do you call it like um the try because obviously France had a disallowed try before that. But when they scored the try, then the fans were singing that song and it was all fun. But because the stadium was, I would say 60-40 Italy and France fans, obviously they're relatively close, they're rivals, all that sort of stuff. When France then scored, they then basically mocked, sang that song back to them. Obviously, the stadium announcer didn't play the song for them, but then they were basically mocking him singing that song as well. And it was really loud. Like you could feel like there's a lot of France fans. And that first try, I can't describe to you. When Menoncello went over, like the stadium
Yo.
was shaking with how much excitement there was there for Italy. And I mean, it was a great game attack wise. I think both Sean Edwards and what's the Italy's defensive coach name? I think he's
Can't
something
remember.
Horsen, if I'm not mistaken. I think they'll be absolutely mad at the game because it was not good defending from both teams. Like both teams were really allowing their opponents to, make breaks, to get meters, to really, I think that was not, I mean, I think that's the one thing France have to really work on for the island game is the defense now for two games running has just not been good enough against England and against Italy. They are allowing too many chances for teams to really get past them, and their defense is not really making an impact in the game. But attack wise, and I mean, I'm not going to complain about a game where they scored 97 points when I'm watching. It was really, really good rugby at times. Like, and I guess, yeah, sure, we can talk about that aspect. The France backline was absolutely like pretty much from the 30th minute onwards, because it was quite tight in the first 30 minutes. But from that point onwards, the French backline just played like they were just playing at a ridiculous level.
Sorry. It's they were insane. I just want to like Leo Barre at 15.
Mm,
I'm just I'm super happy to see him in the mix. I love Barase and Barre. I was really very keen to watch them play, but there's a bit of a problem brewing at 15. Not that I ever think Ramos is going to get dropped, but there's now a reason to think about it. You know what I mean? Like there's reason to have options. But I mean, remember, I mean, I messaged in the group just saying, listen, second week running that Antoine Dupont has been so, and that was like 20 minutes into the game. So Italy, I apologize. That was me. It was all me. It was nothing that you did. It was me. But yeah, he turned it on. I was flipping. I was about to throw something at the TV when Dupont's running that inside line. He gets that inside pass like all other nines do, and the commentator was like, "Oh, that's incredible! Dupont is a genius. He's run the Antoine Dupont line," and I'm like, "What? That's like any nine line." But yeah, it was good. That back line was crazy, man, and it's so weird. But I know I can't even remember what the halftime score was, but it felt like Italy was still kind of in it because Italy was
mm,
scoring points. Like that was the
yeah.
thing, is like they were like, okay, cool, it's fine. You scored two tries, but we also going to score two. Like let's have a go. It figured like it was just going to be a much higher scoring game for Italy, but what a cracking way to end. I'm so jealous you went. I'm also so stoked, man. What an unbelievable experience. And you got to see the greatest rugby player of all time, if many would,
Some
if
say,
you'd
some
believe
say.
what, yes, some say. I mean,
It
Menoncello is
was
outstanding.
he is fantastic. It was 17-21 after 28 minutes. Breaks just scored, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be like almost like this, like a, I because I was saying to my wife when Italy scored that game, I was like, look, if it's gonna be a basketball game, it's not gonna work out well for Italy because France ultimately has too much talent and star power If we've decided that defense is not gonna be a thing, this game's gonna get away from Italy. I just didn't think it would be from there 52 points to 7. That's absolutely ridiculous. So, yeah, I think in terms of the French backline, I think what I was able to observe is, I think the nice thing with Ramos being sort of trusting him as like basically the second choice 10 is when now he plays with Ntamako. I think he is eligible to play for in the Ireland game.
Yes, he
Is
is.
so obviously those three obviously were played together for Toulouse, but they work well with each other, and they are able basically I think how the French attack works from how I saw it yesterday was once either Dupont or Ramos have the ball, they allow them basically, it's now on the other players to run the lines and to run the support lines around them to be able to take the opportunity if Dupont or Ramos beat the first defender or they commit two defenders to them or whatever the case is. Allow them to sort of do what they need to do and do the special things that they're able to do with ball in hand so that when the pass comes, you are able to capitalize on it. There are so many times where obviously, especially France have that they just are ridiculous offloaders. They Opta says that they have success with 92% of their offloads in the Six
Yo,
Nations so far, which is by far the highest. And it's because like they really worked on that ability of as I get tackled, obviously you're drawing in players, the ball pops out. Then the next player can make a few meters, and then. And their forwards and their backs doesn't matter, they're able to play off each other. But then they're able to once, that sort of tight attack happens, then you'll see Ramos with probably one of or two of his both of his wingers coming around the shoulder, and then that's when the fun happens. And then Ramos able to come around, he gets the ball, and then you have three or four backline players all running crazy lines off him, and then they are able to get. And that's maybe the criticism they can have with like England, for example, but they're able to get Bielbiari and Atisoba onto the ball as much as possible. And those two, especially Biarri in this game, they are able to obviously once you give them space and opportunity, they'll do something with that ball. I mean,
yeah,
it's crazy that they were able to drop Damien Penaud. It seems like he's been dropped effectively. They dropped him from this game, and Theo Atisobe was like, "That's fine. I'll score two tries. Don't worry about it." Like it all happens pretty much. It's all about can you stop France from offloading and getting those meters because sometimes it's not even with how many big ball carriers they have. It's not like Antonio or Tafifunua or whoever makes meters all the time that they carry. Sometimes they are stopped on the gain line, but then they get the offload off, and then that's when the trouble comes. So
yeah.
I think
It's that
for
it's
Italy,
that second wave of that first phase attack that just
mm,
absolutely kills you.
yeah, what Italy did not do well is the offloads were just flowing at a crazy rate, and they just felt like they gave Dupont too much time. Like, there's so many situations where Dupont, I mean, okay, offloads 27 offloads for France to 4 for Italy, and where England pretty much, I mean, we talked about this last time. Dupont didn't really run the ball against England. I think he had two carries. This game, he had the most carries. I mean, he did play a bit of 10 as well, but he had the most carries in this game. And that was kind of because Italy do have a bit of a rush defense, but it seemed like their defense short circuited because they're like, okay, if we rush, Dupont obviously is good enough to pass or kick from there and get it to someone that is out wide. So do we rush him? I don't think we should, but it's Antoine Dupont. We need to get him down. But we don't want him to pass or to get the ball to someone else because Biabari is out there or whoever. Like, it seemed like they were not sure what to do. And Dupont is like, thank you. I will now show my biggest hater, Shaun, how good I can be once you doubt me. And it just, you can't, that's the thing. You either need to shut down Dupont as quick as possible or you need to basically be like, okay, the defense will be a bit passive and wait for France to make the move, and then we'll tackle you. It seemed like Italy was kind of trying to do both,
Mm.
and that's where the trouble came for them. And yeah, it's and that's the crazy thing about this match. It seemed like for 30 minutes there's going to be a sort of like I score, you score match, and then France at some stage was like, no, we are the good team here. We will score from now. Thank you very much. And it I don't even know if Italy did too much wrong. I mean, obviously um, they did obviously concede 11 tries. So I'm not saying they had in any way a good performance at all, but I don't think they did too much wrong. It's just now when France decides, and I guess France is almost in that bracket where New Zealand is or maybe used to be, where if you have a bad day against France, I think you can catch 50, 60 pretty easily.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a question. When you watch a game live, you do get obviously to see a lot more. You have more panoramic vision.
Mm.
What did something stand out for you? Was there a player that was doing something different, or for either side? Like, was there something that you really like? Huh, that's very interesting.
For me, it was two things. One, Um, Italy, and I mean it. I think it brought up the one try and almost caused another. Italy was great in. I think it was Canoni, Niccolo Canoni, the lock Canoni. Like he had that offload that I think went inside to bricks and then created that try. So Italy's
Oh, yeah.
attack, I think there's something there, like where they're able to they get their forwards into position. They trust their forwards to make the the offloads or the runs, whether they should pass or not, and they're able to get those centers into positions where they can make some havoc. So that was one thing that I was like, oh, this is really nice how Canoni was able to offload there. I think for France, it was just at some stage how narrow the attack was, and then they then just decide. Like you can just see like their backline players getting excited when they feel like the chances are and they've sucked in enough people. And it clicks so quickly from you have like Ramos and one or two of the other backline players like all almost like behind the ruck and sort of waiting to make their move. And sometimes they'll play it tight and then maybe try to get someone to loop around and then get like a 3-on-2 type of situation. But sometimes they're like, okay, we can actually just go wide with like sort of more conventional hands. And it clicks so quickly into gear. The other thing, I think the play that stood out for me watching live was Biari. He
Oof.
is really, 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 really good. Like, yeah, and he's only 21. I think he's still 21. Like, just his skill. Like, he has really good, like, I don't have that much space, but I can still cause damage to you. So if it's
Mm.
not his feet, if it's the fact that he's almost like a Brian Banner chip chase merchant, like he'll kick the ball ahead and just be like, I am faster than you, whatever it is. And he also makes some really good reads defensively as well. He can get his bones into someone there, but he's able to do so much for that team. So it does. I think that's what's going to be so exciting for France. Obviously, they have Ireland coming up, and hopefully they can. If they win the Six Nations, then they're going to play their sixth team against New Zealand. But then they have South Africa in November. Like in those games, it's really about how are you able to shut down that attacking game plan? And I think France was also like, which there was, I think, which is why they did the 7-1 in this game. They're like, okay, we probably can't beat Ireland the conventional way. We have to just bully them. And that's what they showed in that second half when the new pack came on. And I mean, a new pack that has Cyril by Julien Marchand, Roman Taifufenua is ridiculous. And they were like, okay, cool, it's time to now put you guys into the hurt locker. And they just went crazy on them. So I think that's what they're going to probably try to do with Ireland, especially if Ireland isn't able to pick Tide Furlong. Maybe Caelan Doris is probably a doubt as well. Is just be like, okay, we're going to just really just steamroll you guys with our big forwards and then allow our backs the space to do what they can do.
Mm. Awesome. Love it. I'm uh, I'm a big fan of Bilberry. He's yo. forgot that he's 21. Like, I know he's a youngster, but he's going to do some crazy stuff in his career because he looks like he's got that. He's ridiculously fast, but he's very busy. I did notice that, well, more so Bilberry, but like France love their wingers to come in and get involved, like come
Mm.
look for stuff, come do stuff. So yeah, they're very different, which is great. The thing is they're deadly. Like they're deadly going for the corner, but they're also deadly cutting inside and linking. They do link relatively well. So happy days. What an
Yeah,
awesome trip,
LBB.
eh?
Yeah, it was fantastic. One criticism, Rome, you need to fix your public transport.
You tell them.
I don't know what was going on, but it was impossible to get out of the city, like from the stadium back into the city. Like buses weren't really coming. Buses were obviously really full. Like usually, I mean, in South Africa, I think when there is a big match, there's special arrangements made for public transport. Obviously, knowing that there's now 60, 70,000 people that are now going from one area back home. And it seemed like Rome was like, nah, you can figure out the public transport. And it was not happening.
Rugby?
So,
What's rugby? No, not today.
yeah.
No budget.
But oh, I think another thing I forgot to mention is so, I mean, I know South African teams have been doing this a bit, and I think teams around the world have been trying to do this of, okay, how can we get non-rugby fans to the game? And how can we also just make sure that it's not 60,000 people all leaving at the same time and causing massive traffic? So they did this like pretty much like a Euro dance type of concert outside the stadium after the game. And it was pumping, man. It really felt like, okay, this is you'd probably pay pretty decent money to go and watch this in a club or at a festival somewhere. So I was like, this is really good value for money. And it really was like it really did create like a great atmosphere out after the game. Like the food stalls are still open. There's people obviously enjoying themselves. There's what happens, I think, around the world after any game is people being thrown up in the air for lineouts and passing and impromptu games of like, I guess, tackle slash touch rugby. Like it really created such a nice atmosphere. But it was so cool that like even with the dancing and people like the young guys and girls like drinking all that sort of stuff, there was quite a few kids there, and it did feel like it was still a really kid friendly type of atmosphere. So yeah, big shout out to the Stadio Olimpico. Big shout out to the Italian Rugby Federation. They're doing something really right with like the match atmosphere, and the game was full. It was absolutely full. Obviously, I think the French fans helped with that, but it was a really nice festival. I just hope for their sake, and I think that's something I want to ask you about, Sean. Is I mean, Lamaro was distraught after the game. Like you could see on his face, he was crestfallen. Obviously, we saw in 2023, Italy got spanked by the All Blacks in France. And this wasn't supposed to happen with Gonzalo Casada. Like, is it a one off? Is it a problem? Like, how do we, is this just one of those games? I think we talk about this sometimes in the pod where we just have to forget it as quickly as possible. Just don't talk about it ever again.
Yeah, it's the thing is Italy played well. Like they played well for longer periods of the game than what we're used to in these kind of results. Um, I think Italy are going to have this kind of results like probably once a year for a few years still to come. They, you know, it's gonna like it's just the way it is. I think they're going to be competitive, but there's going to just be those times when they're not competitive or where, like a side like France took this game really seriously. With respect to Italy, like that it doesn't happen that often, and it's starting to happen now. Like when the French named that side, I was like, yo, there's no draw happening. There's not going to be a draw, not like last year. So that's the thing is sides will be taking them seriously and be making sure that they don't slip up because they know there's a higher chance of them slipping up because Italy are performing. So it'll probably happen once a year moving forward, every now and then, maybe twice a year if they have a bad year. I think it's just fuel for the next team talk, you know. So yeah, but regardless of the scoreline, like they are a better side. They are a way better side. Like they're good. They've got deadly players. You literally need to do your homework and figure them out. They've got absolute buses in midfield. I mean, we're living in an incredible time where we get to watch some of the goat midfields of the country's rugby history. You know, it's flipping awesome.
Yeah. I mean, Italy just needs to balance things out, I think, defensively. Like, they're the highest for dominant tackles. They make the most dominant tackles in the game. A lot of their players are near the top for that, but they also miss the most tackles that lead to tries. So, are they almost like shooting up to try and make the big
Yeah,
hit? And then
yeah,
that puts them into trouble with other things. I think there's an element of that. I do think the one thing with the Brixton Cello combination is something isn't quite happening with their defense. I don't know if it's like just them. Obviously, there's things around them as well, but there's too many. It feels like, I mean, Scotland also did this to Italy in the first round. It feels like it is possible for a team to just crack them open when they need to. So things aren't quite clicking in that respect. And look, you scored 3 tries against France. I think that's still a good day. And this was after the first 2 rounds when I was a bit worried about the Italian attack. The Italian attack seems fine, but you can't concede 11 tries. And that's, yeah, I mean, I'm just hoping there isn't a bit of a hangover from this result because, like I said, I think maybe not, or definitely not the Ireland game in the last round, but this England game, I think there's a chance there. Like, they can do something, but they really need to work through and solve this thing. I mean, luckily, I guess England won't test this Italian defense like the French did.
yeah, yeah. I was very, I was actually very worried about Menonchero playing 12 uh, because I think he offers more at 13 on defense and on attack. But I really haven't had any grounds to push that agenda of mine. Um, but yeah, like I don't think they're that bad on defense. But then again, you're right. Like you can't concede a million tries and then just kind of say everything's okay. We're very interesting is be like, cool, like let's keep everything the same, but let's make sure that we really focus on the where. Like, where are we missing that tackle?
Mm.
You know, like that, you know, very much like, cool, go for it. Like, go for it if you're in their half and you get penalized, it doesn't matter. Just don't get penalized in the 22. So they could perhaps just got to pick their moment for some decision making. But when you're doing that, that you do need to be a little bit more cautious on defense, which is definitely not their vibe.
Yeah, I think there's something there. Like there is, I do think. I mean, I know called him on Huerson, but he has talked about. Okay, I'm trying to model
Marius.
the Marius Huerson has said he wants to model it on what South Africa does. So you have the right sort of like intentions, but yeah, you just have to execute it in such a way. And obviously, I think that's kind of reason what has gotten England to trouble is if there is a miss, especially out wide, you should have your centers and flanks, especially herring down to sort of cover the corner. So
Mm,
I think you're right, Sean. It is that thing of like, okay, where are we missing these tackles? And now what causes this to now lead to this to then sort of lead to a try? But yeah, I think the other thing is it did seem like Italy sort of dropped their heads. And that's the problem. So you can't
yes.
really that can't happen for them anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's so sad because I thought, geez, Menonchero looked really good with ball in hand. And he was making some big hits. I thought Capozzo had a few times where he got the ball in space and he was causing some problems there for France. Like, that's in that first 30 minutes, I thought Dupont wasn't really kicking well. He was just kicking